morning and welcome to Morning Movie News. Now in Hollywood, it's always shocking who can continue to work and who can't. And one person I'm very surprised to see continue to get work is Rupert Sanders. Now you might recall that he is director of Snow White and the Huntsman, a film which, aside from Charlize Theron's performance, was overwhelmingly disappointing. But then on top of that, he was really embroiled in a scandal when he started making out with Kristen Stewart in public. So much so that, you have to think maybe they intended to get caught, because who makes out in public when one person is involved in a huge relationship with Robert Pattinson, which fuels a huge billion-dollar franchise, and when the other person is married with children, supposedly still happily, and, being called a homewrecker, I don't know. I mean, we'll see. So far, it hasn't hurt Angelina Jolie's career, and we'll see what it does for Kristen Stewart. She really hasn't had a chance to see if there have been any repercussions, because she hasn't worked very much after Twilight has wrapped. So, but while she's trying to find a project, her ex-boyfriend, Rupert Sanders, has just landed Ghost in the Shell. What? Not only did he get a new project, I mean, he has a couple other smaller projects that he's supposed to be, set for, so he's deciding which to direct first. But Ghost in the Shell is a huge property, so it's amazing that they would take someone, when I first saw the news, I was confusing it with a different Rupert, the guy who directed Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and I was like, oh, that's a great choice. And then I was like, wait a minute, Rupert Sanders? So I did a total spit take, double take. I did both. I spit and I did a double take because it was so shocking. Basically, I've never really watched Ghost in the Shell. I'm sorry. Horrible admission, but I'm as much as I like anime, I've really only watched Cowboy Bebop and Akira. It's hard for me to get my hand, I have so many things I want to check out that, I think now I should probably, because they're making a movie out of it. But I do know it's been coming up a lot lately with all these artificial intelligence movies. For instance, when the Transcendence trailer hit, everybody was like, so basically it's Ghost in the Shell. So apparently there's some stuff dealing with AI there. But basically the setup, the Hollywood pitch, is that it's a Japanese government covert ops team. And what they do is they fight technology-related crimes. And I guess that would, it's a futuristic version. There would be some, artificial intelligence entity, which is a master criminal. Very clever choice. Now, I think there are a lot of interesting questions about this. Can Rupert Sanders finally do a good job on something? It's almost like Joseph Kosinski continuing to get work from Tron Legacy, and then after Oblivion, you'd be like, who's going to give this guy a third shot? I mean, some of you liked Oblivion quite a bit. I just thought it had riddled with holes and was just extremely problematic. A little even worse than Tron Legacy, but still, it's another director. I just cannot understand why he continues to work. But with Rupert Sanders, will this be a whitewashed film, or will it have an Asian cast? That would be very brave of Hollywood, but I think smart, considering how well movies are doing in China now. And also, it would just be so offensive to whitewash a property that is a Japanese anime property. And look how well Pacific Rim has done. And, that had a Japanese lead. I think that she wasn't well utilized, but still, it was a step in the right direction. So Ghost in the Shell is coming. Rupert Sanders will helm it. Maybe Kristen Stewart will be in it. It's a horrible joke, and hopefully that's not true. I'm sure he has to stay away from her. I don't know if he actually ever ended up getting divorced, because that kind of crossed into the gossip realm that I wasn't particularly interested in anymore. All right, so that's the first story of the day. Sorry, Ghost in the Shell fans, but I guess you can still hold out some hope. The second story is that A24 acquired another film out at Sundance, and I think that that's always worth noting now, because A24, I think, has a real eye for young films, like young talent. They had The Spectacular Now, The Bling Ring last year. They have a really great lineup of the films that they do, and I think that they're very clever in their choices. So this one's called Life After Beth, and I'm curious about it. It has a very good cast. Dane DeHaan stars as this guy who's just devastated when his girlfriend, Aubrey Plaza, passes away. But lo and behold, the tagline says, Zach is devastated by the unexpected death of his girlfriend, Beth. When she mysteriously returns, he gets a second chance at love as his world is upended. Yes, what they're not saying there, and what came out in other coverage of this movie, I don't know if this is like a spoiler, it'll probably show up in the trailer, obviously, anyway, but that Beth comes back as a zombie. And they actually have a pretty funny photo that came out of Aubrey Plaza as a zombie, kind of like in a party dress. And so I think that was amusing, and I really like Aubrey Plaza. The To-Do List was a really great film that didn't get the recognition I felt it deserved. But so she's going to star in this film. It also stars John C. Reilly, Paul Reiser, that's very interesting, and Anna Kendrick. So I think that this sounds promising. I do think it's going to have a hard time competing with two other independent films, which are very, very good, and I highly recommend you check out. Well, independent and small. The first is Ruby Sparks, written by Zoe Kazan, Elia Kazan's, I think, granddaughter. It's very well done. She wrote the film. It's a great look at how men relate to women. It co-stars her real-life boyfriend, Paul Dano. A very good movie. I mean, it's not a fantastic film, but some of the ideas that it explores are quite sophisticated and done in a very good manner. And I think it covers topics that you don't see a lot in Hollywood or any kind of forms of entertainment, books or anything. I think it was very well done. And it has a really powerful, disturbing scene towards the end. I liked it. It stuck with me. But the other movie this is going to have a very hard time competing with is Warm Bodies. Nicholas Hoult was just fantastic in that movie as R. I loved it so much. I think he did a great job. Teresa Palmer was his love interest there. They flipped it. The guy was the zombie. And I wonder if this will try and have as happy an ending as that film. But Warm Bodies, also not an underappreciated film that didn't get the attention it deserved. So you kind of Ruby Sparks meets Warm Bodies here. So maybe A24, though. A24 didn't launch any of those other two movies. Maybe A24 can get this film the attention it deserves. So always keep an eye on A24. And if you are a budding filmmaker, A24 is always looking for movies about, teens and 20-somethings, and they do a really good job distributing them and getting the media attention. So that's great news for Life After Beth, and hopefully great news for us as we'll get another movie. But I do have to also wonder, can the zombie craze continue for this long? Because also there's Zombieland, a fantastic film. So how many great zombie comedies can you make before you've already covered all the bases? But Dane DeHaan, also, it's great to see him get that kind of a role instead of always playing the villain. So I'm interested to see what he does with it. All right, so that's the second story of the day. The third story is that Grace of Monaco kind of has a semi-release date. As you might have seen, I believe I've covered it before here on Morning Movie News, but the director, Olivier DeHaan, another DeHaan, he only has one A at the end of his name, but Olivier DeHaan, who did a phenomenal job directing La Vie en Rose, directed this Grace of Monaco film about Grace Kelly, a certain period of her life when she was married to Prince Rainier. And, it was not a happy marriage. It was really a marriage for publicity. They both cheated. If you look into that history, it's very interesting that she gave up being a movie star to be a princess, but I think it's very fair to say paid a big price for that. And probably, you have to wonder at the end, did she feel it was worth it? I know her father was very upset that she married Prince Rainier because her father was a former Olympic champion. He had more money than Prince Rainier, so he really felt this was a step down, and it was crazy for her to leave Hollywood in a career at the top of her game. Hitchcock was, of course, very upset to go and become this princess in this very tiny country, which is like the size of Central Park. But anyway, so they've been fighting, and Olivier DeHaan has basically been very public, saying Harvey Weinstein is chopping up his movie and making a mess, and there are basically two versions right now. DeHaan's version and Weinstein's version with his notes, yet apparently neither is finished. So while it was taken off its French release date, people thought maybe the film had been scrapped. It was announced, I think, like the very next day or so, that it would be premiering at Cannes, opening the festival in 2014. But no word yet on which version would open it, DeHaan's or Weinstein's. And I think this is a very shrewd move by Harvey, because I think he wants to be able to say, if DeHaan does self-implode and take this movie down with him, I think Harvey wants to be able to say he did everything he possibly could to give this movie a great launch, lining up a phenomenal release, premiere at the Cannes Film Festival, and to really make sure he paints DeHaan into a corner where if DeHaan is to just, renege and walk away, it's his fault. He can't blame Harvey for not giving his film the best shot it has. Although I have to say, he kind of messed up August Osage County, apparently, with the first edit that they rushed for Toronto. He was apologizing about that. But I'd say on the whole, Harvey kind of knows what he's doing. So I think Olivier DeHaan really should think long and hard about the notes he's been given. But I'm very curious to see how this film is accepted. It really is a glamour piece. I think Nicole Kidman can be great, or she can not be great. She sometimes tends not to be sympathetic. And I think a film about how beautiful Grace Kelly was, I don't know how much fun people would have watching that. I thought the trailer was interesting, though. I think it really captured the Technicolor look of the films that she starred in. So I have some interest in it. And I'm a big Grace Kelly fan. I really liked the work that she did, particularly for Alfred Hitchcock. I'm a big Hitchcock fan. And Rear Window is one of my 3 favorite films of all time. So I will always have a soft spot for that. Although, interestingly, To Catch a Thief, which she shot in Monaco, I feel is actually her weakest Hitchcock film. All right, so that's the third story of the day. The viewer question is from GM Riguez. And GM says, "Hey Grace, as usual, I have a question." Thank you, GM. For the past few years, most movies that come out are based on best-selling novels, comic books, or true events. Do you think that movies will stay this way and not create any new, fresh ideas for themselves? And do you like movies based on something, or do you prefer movies that are its own creation? Hope you can read this. Bye. I did read it, GM, and I picked it today as today's question. Actually, I think you might not know this, obviously, from the way you phrased your question, but Hollywood has been basing their movies on other material, on other source material, since Hollywood began. This is just the name of the game, and it's because Hollywood has always been risk-averse. They would rather take something that has already proven itself in some market and translate it to film. Sometimes even they'll buy a book before it's released, and sometimes they'll find properties that a lot of people didn't hear about, but at least they can point to it and say, oh, it was a cult hit, or it's from this famous author. They like to have something to point to that already has a success rate. And sometimes, though, they can be duped into thinking something has a success rate that doesn't. I'm always amazed at the comic books that get greenlit in Hollywood when I'm like, well, if you actually talk to a comic book reader, you would know that that doesn't have a huge fan base and didn't really connect with the readership. Someone just thrust a comic book in front of you and you fell for it. But I think that probably happens with books and everything and such. And also, you'll see a lot of movies are based on newspaper articles and such. Like, for instance, Pain and Gain was on a Vanity Fair article, I believe. And I think that movie turned out great. I understand why this is. I would love for there to be more original ideas in movies. I actually, to me, what's more important is a movie is just well crafted and has something to say. And it has like some perspective. That was one of my problems on Wolf of Wall Street. Some people still are just boiling down my review to that, just, the problem with the nudity and the swearing and stuff. I actually didn't even say I had a problem with the swearing. But if you listen to the whole review, you will see that I had a problem with I felt the film really lacked a lot of depth and a viewpoint. I thought Scorsese had no viewpoint. And I think an artist needs to have a perspective. Unless, I guess, Scorsese has moved into modern art and he just lets it sit and you just judge it for yourself. But I think that's kind of sloppy art. So I think you shouldn't judge a film on this kind of delineation. Is it based on something? Is it original? That doesn't matter. Is it good? And I think Hollywood's having a hard enough time meeting that criteria for us really to be too concerned with whether or not something's based on something. So, like for instance, Back to the Future, original idea that Robert Zemeckis dreamed up, but The Godfather, based on a really great book. So, and Alfred Hitchcock would always base a lot of his things on books and such. And even, Psycho is based on a real story, ripped from the headlines, the Ed Gein murders. So I think that as long as it's just well done, and also you don't just do a cheap adaptation, or you don't put the effort in to really adapt something and make it interesting. So that's the way Hollywood works. It's just the way it is. And as I said, until they really get the quality issue under control, quality control issue squared away, I think that it's fine either way. And it doesn't bother me, actually. I know some of you guys, when I say something's like my original and sequel lists, and you guys are like, this isn't an original movie, it's based on a book. And it's like, well, that's just not the way Hollywood thinks. Is it original to Hollywood? Because a lot of times, a book is successful, but not still, even though it's successful as a book, not a ton of people have read it. It just, it's enough for Hollywood, for instance, that's one of the things you should realize. It's enough if people have heard of the book. And they're like, oh, I heard a lot about that book, now it's a movie. I don't want to read a book, but I'll certainly watch a movie. For instance, Gone Girl is getting a lot of heat of being a book. And also, I think it makes people feel, well, this was a book and it did well, and two people vouched for this story, the publisher and the Hollywood studio executives. Well, then who am I to say no? And that's why, it's a selling angle as well. It's like, oh, based on the best-selling novel, or from this acclaimed author, or readers are already enchanted by the story. Now you can be too. It's just, it's just a security measure. So I'm curious to how you guys feel about this. Does it bother you? I know it really does, as I said, bother some people, whether or not something's an original story or not. If it does bother you, why does it bother you so much? Write your thoughts down below. Thank you for tuning in for today's episode. And write down below what you think of just not only the viewer question, but the top 3 stories of the day. Thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.